Hello, hello, and welcome. If you know me, you know that I love food. When creating a podcast about creativity, one of the first artists that I thought to invite on was a chef. And I had just the person to ask. Chef Star Ironside. Her unique insight from her brain to her hands to your taste buds is unreal. I personally have watched her work as well as tasted some of her art, and it is delicious. I hope this episode doesn't make your mouth water too much. Full disclosure, I didn't realize when setting up the recording equipment that the table we used was very flimsy. I would say we, but it was mostly me who bumped the table often during the interview. There are some loud thuds during the interview. It sounds like somebody's driving by with their bass turned all the way up, but it's just my legs. I'm still learning. My apologies for that, but I hope your interests can still be piqued by this unique artist. This episode was recorded in Kalispell, Montana, and some time ago, and published now due to me learning how to edit and publish a podcast, so some info might be a little old, but I hope you can still use all of the information to look up their work, and your interest is piqued. I hope you are having a grand day, and please enjoy this week's episode I've titled, Spongebob to the Menu. Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to Pique My Interest, a podcast dedicated to creativity. My name is Scoob Decker, and I am an artist. This podcast was created to learn more about different styles of art and, more importantly, meet some incredible artists and explore their craft and how they create. I am currently in Kalispell, Montana at the House of S&N. I am so excited because, if you know, I love all sorts of arts and crafts, but one of the crafts that I'm most excited about is the culinary arts, and it is something that I don't know a ton about, but mostly I'd like to eat. I love to taste. And so here I am with Chef Star Ironside, and tell me a little bit about the House of S&M.
Hey, Scoob. The House of S&M was hatched as a hilarious idea. I literally gave it 5 months before we would be pitchforked and torched out of town. This is a little bit of a conservative area. The House of S&M stands for Star and Marty, so that's me and my husband. We started this because Marty got burnt out of the corporate life. He was in a place where he wasn't moving up. The job was really straining on him. He didn't want to do it. I had previously retired out of the chef world, the back of the house world, sold my catering business out of Florida, moved up here, up to the hills, and didn't want to have anything to do with people at all.
As you do in Montana.
Right, as one does. So when Marty and I started thinking about doing something together, we first came up with something called Pokemon Crawl, a pub crawl. So you just go to different pubs downtown Whitefish and you catch all these Pokemon. Meanwhile, we were doing that because we were bored out of our minds and we wanted something to do together. We work really well. I am the creative force. He is the logistical force. This works like a symbiotic creature. It really works well. So he said, why don't we open a taco truck? Well, I have trained at high-end restaurants, Le Cordon Bleu, Culinary Institute of America, and Greystone in Napa. I'm a grade 2 sommelier out of the Court of Sommeliers. So when he said taco truck, I think I laughed for like 3 days straight. Tacos were like, what do you know? Although the funny thing is that him and I both grew up in California. I'm half Mexican. I'm what they call a Germican. And he's a Frenchican. He's French and German. I'm Mexican and German. I grew up with a grandmother who cooked a lot of tacos we had something like 86 cousins. I don't know. We had a lot, big family. So tacos were the staple of everything. I can't remember a meal per week that we didn't have some sort of taco thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I can do this, right? Graduating all these culinary schools, the thing that I recall most is most of the best chefs came from poor backgrounds because it became a way of survival. So we had to be creative with our food, and we had to be able to eat obviously. So when he said taco truck, I was like, okay, let's, why not? Why not? House of S&M, so good it hurts. It was wonderful. And I give this 5 months before we're set on fire in the town square.
All right. Well, that's the history of the House of S&M. And once again, can you introduce us, tell us your name?
Star Ironside.
And you gave us a little bit about your background and a little bit about your education. Mm-hmm. What piqued your interest about the culinary arts? What drew you towards food?
I grew up in the Central Valley in California, and that is a predominantly farming culture. My world revolved around farming in some way, shape, or form. My uncle owned a dairy. I grew up in a garden. It was just constant agriculture. It was a lot of find the food, grow the food. And in California, we don't have 4 seasons. It's kind of one season with some rain and a fog. That's about it. So I was able to have year-round gardens. Where I grew up, where my grandparents who raised me were at, they already had mature fruit trees, and that was I felt like I was one, so I went out there and pruned and kept bees from the time I was 5 on up, and raised chickens, and I kind of did it all myself. My grandparents were kind of done with kids, so I was just kind of raised myself under their household. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I used to have a lot of fruits and vegetables and gardens because I just found it fascinating that you could grow oranges, and I had an avocado tree and a black mission fig tree, and I took that for granted as a child because I'm like, I have everything. I used to go out there and feed myself all day long and not really think about it. I grew up across the street from Thompson seedless grapes. So all of the table grapes you see on your tables have been grown out in the valley right across the street from the little dusty farm town I was at. For me, that was really important to feed, to flavor. I remember marinating meat that my uncle had butchered a steer, and I had the beef from it, and I remember marinating that. I had these old Betty Crocker cookbooks that were literally falling apart, and they had like Vienna sausage and spaghetti, like Jello molds and stuff, and what the hell is this? It is just, what are you doing? But I remember looking at the marinades and understanding what it did, and I think I was 8 at the time, but I was so just fascinated that you could eat this stuff. And then I learned how to plate, I think, at 10. I had earned ribbons at the fair for apple pies and stuff like that when I was a kid, and I grew roses. I didn't realize you could eat roses. You can make teas out of roses. So all of this as a kid, and I was, give a kid some dirt to play in. That's what I did. And that's what I did. So that's the history. That's what got me excited about it. But not until time passed that it became a survival mode. As an adult, like, I need to find food, and you have to get really creative with, spaghetti and pantry foods, So that's, I think,
ramen.
Where kind of, ramen pizza, yeah.
You talked about foraging and farming and kind of eating crops here and there, but then there was kind of a huge jump to plating and pies and recipes. Was there a moment that you kind of understood the combining of ingredients? Similar to a painter might look at canvas and a brush and some paint and see a painting when the rest of us just see ingredients. Do you look at some ingredients and kind of know or understand how things might go together? Or was there a situation that dawned upon you?
Actually, absolutely. So my grandparents, they were a little bit odd in their ways. They were what we now know as conspiracy theorists. And that was not a fun thing back in the day. But I wasn't allowed to really watch TV. I wasn't allowed to do anything. But they had all of these amazing books. And a lot of them had artwork. I remember going through some pages and seeing the first Van Gogh, like the Starry Night. And I was like, what is this? And I was reading about it, and it was from the 80s. It was, probably the wrong interpretation and definition that you could possibly have of this painting and what he did. And they left out his mental illness. They left out a lot of things. So it was just kind of a really sweet little bite of it. But I remember seeing that in color for the first time on a page. And I looked at that and I'm like, this is the night sky. Somebody seen that from looking outside. And I remember looking outside and I couldn't figure it out. Looked at the painting, looked outside. And then I'm like, well, he seen that and made this happen, and this is beautiful. So putting those two together, I remember making so I've always been heavily into the art and painting and stuff like that, and it's just, finger painting and stuff as a kid. But then I started getting into the serious background of art. That picture right there made me think, well, blues and yellows, they go well together, the color wheel. So when I started cooking, I immediately looked at a lot of the colors, and this is when I was like 10 maybe. But I remember, what really looks good together is green from the orange tree. So I had some leaves on the plate, and I remember it was just a piece of bread, and I had made marmalade, but that bread was the wrong color. And it was just kind of like, I needed that bread to be a certain color because it made the jam pop out. And then I wanted those leaves on the side of the plate, and it was just nothing more than a kid messing around. But I realized like those colors really look good together. And I'm like, what for me, it was like, can I make a Starry Night on a plate and make it so inviting that somebody wants to sink their teeth into it? Because it's not too far. You eat with your eyes first, obviously. So it's not too far of a leap to look at something really cool like a piece of bread with marmalade and a green leaf on the side of the plate to, I really want to eat that. There's some paintings I look at and I'm like, I wonder what that tastes like. It's a short trip from the eyes to the mouth to the nose to the ears, and when you're looking at something, you're like, that looks really good. Now I call it sexy because it's like, that looks sexy. I really want to sink my teeth into that, but it's a painting. So how can I do that edible wise? So that's the first time that it linked over to me, is looking at that painting, looking at the sky, and realizing he made that happen. What can I make happen out of food to make it look just like that painting? And then you want to eat it, because that's the most satisfying thing in the world, is you can look at art but you can't ingest it. You can do that with food. It's really cool. So yeah, I ended up eating like a whole jar of marmalade that day, trying to plate everything.
So you are definitely a visual, not necessarily focusing on the tastes of things, but also the visual aspects of
Absolutely.
them. And you believe that there is a huge tangibleness to them.
Absolutely.
Now, when I cook, my food doesn't look sexy, but it tastes good. Do you have anything to say about food standing as itself as just flavor rather than as it's presented?
Absolutely. There's a time and place for the flavor. You're going to smell it. You're going to smell a lot more than you taste. So you can only taste like 5 things, but you can smell all kinds of things. So that's one of the most important things too, is if you have something that invokes a memory, and you smell it. And then, so when you go to eat something and the flavor's there, you're going to smell it first. And that's really important. The smell of fresh baked bread. And we were just at the coffee shop. So the smell of coffee, it invokes a lot of strong memories. The first thing you want to do is put it in your mouth. And that's really exciting. Because then you get to really experience it fully. And you can't really do that with paintings or with sculptures and stuff. And it's kind of frustrating, to be honest. If I see a sculpture that's like done in white marble, the first thing I'm going to think of is, God, if that was done in white chocolate, I would be eating that.
You can't put a Picasso in your mouth.
No, you should be able to really experience it.
One of the reasons I ask is because if you don't know, the House of S&M specializes in tacos. And we're sitting here, there's a wall of hot sauces. If you've ever seen any of Star's tacos, they're about the size of your face and they're massive. I hired Star and Marty to cater my wedding. And that, like she said, just the smell of things influencing your taste buds, it's just incredible. When you are creating your tacos or your culinary arts, what's your process? Are you presented with a challenge? Are you presented with a customer saying, I want something to taste like this? Or are you much more of an open-ended, just walk through the store, see what speaks to you? How can I put this together?
All of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Okay.
And here's the reason why is Because in my 20-year career, God, it hurts to say that. There have been times that people, well, let me back up. In culinary school, you're taught to dissect all of the flavors and pinpoint them, whether through smell, whether through sight, or whether through taste. So if you said, I had a taco once that was from this particular place, I can go there and I am able to dissect that particular flavor profile, and I can probably replicate it. Now, I don't really like doing that, but I understand that my job is to present art that makes everybody happy, which is, it's a tall order because you can never make anybody happy. But I'm able to do that. I kind of feel like that's not my calling, because I'm such a creative. I hate patting myself on the back, but I am such a creative that I can go into a store and you can throw together a mystery basket and I can make you something amazing, but it's going to be new, and new is usually scary to people. So a lot of people don't want to automatically trust their happy centers of their brain and their sensory organs to somebody who they may not know. So they want the same old flavor, a bowl of spaghetti and meatballs. That is a happy thing for a lot of people. Garlic bread, whatever it is, they want those simple items. Now, I can do that. I can make you a dish that is like, this is all the comforts of home in a bowl. It may not look appealing, but it's going to be comfort. And a lot of the times, comfortable gray sweatpants and a dirty shirt, it doesn't look that good, but man, that's the first
thing
we
all want.
Right? You think about that all day long and you get there and you're like, yes. So that may not be visually appealing. I could probably throw some green on there and make it visually appealing, but that's safe. And when people ask me, come up with something new, I'm like, are you ready for this? You're the adventurous type. I can do this, but it may be adventurous. For example, my unicorn taco, that visually looks amazing. The flavor is there, and it does have a hint of safe with the pork, with a little bit of the stuff that you may know, but it's got dates, it's got apples, it's got, oh my God, microgreens, it's got all kinds of stuff, brown sugar, and it's really good, and it has a hibiscus aioli on it, so this is bright purple flavor. You do know all of these flavors, but all together, that's scary. That's really scary for some people. They're like, I don't, that's too much. I just want my gray sweatpants. I just want my stained
It's
shirt.
scary for some people, but it is sexy for others.
Yes.
And absolutely. While you're creating, how often does your craft change? Like adapting flavors, or given these ingredients from somebody, or a flavor profile, and then as you're creating, do things change? How do you adapt in those situations?
Well, funny you should mention that, because right now I'm going through a bit of a artistic changeover. We're moving away from having an open restaurant, because that's not a sustainable business model, to catering, fine dining, and chef's table. So developing a little bit more and reaching out of my own, I want to say I'm pigeonholed at the moment, but reaching out of that and starting to pull new things in. Again, it's back to the gray sweatpants. I'm like, well, I know my little thing, but you can't just rely on your laurels, and you can't just lounge around in gray sweatpants all the time. You have to actually learn your craft. You actually have to grow. And when you're stagnant, it's really scary to want to try new things, because why? My lazy boy recliner is right there. It'll hug me all night if I ask it to. But these newer things, that could be the next lazy boy recliner that you have. You just don't know about it. Mm-hmm. So utilizing a lot of when I fear something, it irritates me. I can't sit around and be afraid. I can't do that. So I go towards the things that tend to scare me. One of them is I need to work on my own culinary world and reach out, and whatever that means. If I have to go to visit every Michelin-starred restaurant or every James Beard Award recipient restaurant and learn and pick out and move myself in a forward direction to where I'm not so stagnant and maybe develop something new. Who knows? But I find that just sitting and staying still, that's fun. Nobody wants to leave their house. Nobody wants to. I mean, nobody wants to move out of that. But having my background and as tacos is wonderful. I may not be famous for like plating some high-end $1,000 piece of beef, but guess what? People are going to come to, including the back of the house chefs that do plate that. They're going to come to me for their tacos. But it doesn't mean that I need to sit back and just rely on that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
You said you're going through a little bit of a creative shift. What inspires you to shift? I know we've been talking a little bit about overcoming creative blocks before we started this, and obviously no artist is going to have an answer for all artists, and some artists are just going to get stuck. But what do you do to overcome creative blocks, to get inspired? I know some folks like to go for a run. Some people like to close themselves off and just journal for a while. What gets you going?
Well, as I spoke before, I'm dealing with this a little bit of a creative hurdle myself because I've pigeonholed into the chef world. Recently, I had strep throat and I was sitting on the bed and I was out of creative juice completely. Couldn't swallow. I was miserable, had a fever, and it was probably one of those points in my life that I didn't realize was the crux of, okay, you are beyond stagnant right now. And I was really frustrated. I watched the Menu with Ralph Fiennes. That was like literally a life changer. And the reason being is because I can see a lot of the allegorical aspects that movie provided. I can feel him getting frustrated and all of the 7 deadly sins that they presented. They've got gluttony, they've got lust, they've got everything in there. And the way the chef is handling things, and he's just fed up and he's homicidal and he's done with it. And I felt like my little creative gremlin in my chest was like, this is it. Set everybody on fire. Make them all s'mores. So going through that, it struck me that I have not been doing what I needed to inspire the creative self. A lot of the times we're on laptops, computers, I'm a gamer. That will drag the creativeness out of you because you're not thinking for yourself. You're a robotic thinker at that point. You're like, yes, click A. Hit that demon, click A. Hit that boss, click B. A lot of where I get my inspiration from is either visual. So I'll watch movies and something will click with me because I like some color aspect, or I'll read a book. And my imagination is ridiculous. You should have seen me as a kid. It was just ridiculous. Just the imagination I had. I'm like, no. And then there was fairies that popped out of the tree, and my grandparents were like, what are you talking about? So for example, this building, I watched Big Fish, and I really enjoyed the part where he showed up to the town of nowhere, and there was strung lights between the buildings, and it was so peaceful and so gorgeous. It kind of reminded me of a Wes Anderson film. You know how they have the symmetry, and then they have the close-ups, and then the feel that you're in this nostalgic, rosy tinted memory. And I think a lot of the times when you think forward, you don't necessarily have that ability to think forward with a rosy glow, but you can remember with a rosy glow. And so for me, that rosy glow is really important because that sits with you. That just sits in your heart, and you just sit there and remember it. All of my childhood memories have a sort of a rosy glow. And at the time, it was just miserable. You know, I was just miserable. It was hot, it was sticky, the bugs biting. But as I look back, it's different. So when I go forward, I'm chasing that little bit of a nostalgia, that rosy glow, no matter what I do. So when we had tacos at your wedding, the driveway up there was just terrifying.
Sorry about that.
It was just terrifying. At the time, I was more concerned with, we're going to fall off the side of the road. But when we got there and we had the ice cream bar, the ice cream s'mores, and we had the truck, and I look back at the picture you so kindly sent us, and we have that sitting on our mantle, and now I remember that with such a wonderful rosy glow that looking forward, I want to make sure that I apply that paint to everything going forward. So what I try to do is when I see a book or something and that already has that feeling, I try to capture that little lightning bug and I try to paint with that no matter what I do. So that's where my inspiration comes from, is I want people to look and think, oh my gosh, the rosy glow. That's it. That's what I'm after.
No, isn't that what we're all after as artists, is just our own little glow? It's funny that you mentioned Rosy Glow, because I had to look it up just to double check. You know who directed Big Fish?
No.
It was the opposite of glowy. It's Tim Burton.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Who I actually picture you as more of most of Tim Burton's stuff, a lot more dark, a lot more.
Everybody says that, man.
Yeah.
Man, I'm trying to.
No,
hide
but
that
everybody's got that little glow that they're trying to find, and
Yeah.
But similar to Tim Burton, kind of going from his darkness and doing other things with this glowness, and that really speaks to certain people. I see you also changing gears a lot of the times,
Yes.
trying out different things. You'd mentioned this building that we're in, that you've created. It's full of foliage and lights and color. And years ago, it did not look like this. What other things do you do? Do you have any other hobbies? Do they complement or contradict your craft? Do you think it's helpful to have in the culinary arts?
Yes. So I would venture to say, and I say this tongue in cheek, I am a whimsical creature. And I want people to see that little sparkle and see that little glow. I firmly believe that a lot of artists have some sort of, I wouldn't say mental illness because it's not really that way, but I think they have some sort of, the way they think is not, I guess the way that I laugh with my husband about it is pig people from Twilight Zone. There's a woman that she's absolutely gorgeous. Everybody else is pig people. And the man, they're like, oh, he's ugly too. Perfect, you know. And they're about the only normal people that get each other, and everybody else is like pig people. So that I use that euphemism, if you will, to say that not everybody is a pig person, but people think differently than yourself. And so whereas I can see a broken cabinet and I can see the whimsy in it, people are looking at me like, you are just a weird creature. I don't know what's going on with you. But I get that a lot because people are afraid of the creative side of it. I do live a lot in the whimsical world, and I really like that. Part of my whimsy is having to do something all the time. And that goes back to the almost like the mental thing is like, I'm probably sure I have ADHD. I'm probably sure I have obsessive compulsive disorder, but I make them work for me. I'm obsessive compulsive in the fact that my kitchen has to be a certain way. I has to have certain instruments just a certain way. I panic if it doesn't. I come out here at 2:00 in the morning. I drive down here to make sure that all of my knives are clean, sitting on the, it seems obsessive at the same time, the mise en place side of it, everything in its place. Same thing with the ADHD is I can do multiple things at once. So when I'm sitting at home and I'm doing my crafting, I do felting, I do foam smithing, I do sewing, I do, you remember the onesies. I do painting. I have a Cricut now. God help us all. I go crafting. I know that's a mess. I go crafting. I do beading. I do everything I can do with my hands. So when I'm sitting at home, the TV's on in a movie. I have my emails in front of me, and I'm usually doing something with my hands, answering emails or playing a video game. I have to keep that going, or I just get really agitated. But that doesn't mean that I can't sit still, because there's times that I go out to the middle of the forest and sit there like a yogi and just look at what's around me. So I do have these moments of time of where I can just sit still. But most of the time, I love creating, and I don't care what it is. I have gardens. I've got painted all this because it gave me something to do. I was down here overnight several times, up on ladders, painting. Not too high on ladders. I'm terrified of heights. But, painting by hand, creating all of the wisteria because I have this vision in my head, and I need it out of my head so bad. that I can't sleep, that I just need it out. Whether it's a taco that I'm making, whether it's a fine dining, or whether it's a whole freaking building, these things like need to come out. It's almost like giving birth, where you're in labor and you're like, I got to get this crap out of me. It's the same at home whenever I'm doing any of my other crafts. I have to get it out of me. So all of my side hustles, all of my side crafts and everything, so many people are like, oh, you should really go into business. And like, you don't have to make everything you do a job. And that takes away the fun from like having a hobby. I have got buckets of crap in my garage that I have done over the 20 some odd years. And it's kind of interesting because I'll look at something and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Who did that? And I don't realize I did it. So that's where I get my inspirations.
I definitely don't like the term disorder, because it definitely gives a negative connotation, because I firmly believe that we all have our own little quirks, our own little things, and whether that heightens another aspect of our lives and whatnot, I just think that we all have something, and we all have our own process to do it. And some people have multiple processes. You can go into a forest and just like lay down, and when you get home you might have to have a thousand things going on. I'm the same way. I just watched The Menu a few days ago, and I was crocheting, and I similarly got a lot out of it, the different themes and the different aspects, working in kitchens before, and being a film lover. It was just super fun to dissect, but I don't think I would have been able to do it if I wasn't crocheting, if I wasn't actively doing something else, so my mind was open to other things. I feel like if I just watched it, I wouldn't have gotten everything that I got out of it. It's very interesting how artists can perceive. Switching gears a little bit, are there any misconceptions about being a chef?
So let's go back to the menu.
To the menu!
I've had a lot of people they'll come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, you're a chef. You're a badass. You must yell and scream at people, and you've worked in my kitchen, and I don't run a kitchen like that. You can't run a why? I don't need to be mean to another human being and scream and cuss at him. I very well can, but that's not. If you get pissed off at a chocolate cake because it didn't rise, you're not going to put your fist through it to try to fix it. You're going to gently try to help it on its way. I've had people come up to me and oh, well, I've worked in this and this and this and this. And I'm like, well, every chef has a different path. We usually are the same. We're usually the pirates in the back of the kitchen. Although some of us are privateers. Others are pirates, and that's okay. We're all in the same ship in the back. We're pyros with knife fetishes, so we're back there trying to do the best we can. A lot of them are artists, and artists have their vices, and that's okay, because a lot of the time the artistic sides of us will run our brain. Remember how I said that we have to give birth to all of these things? Some people just get stuck in the birthing process and they have to find other vices, and that's very normal. Throughout history, matter of fact, it's very normal to have vices to try to control the creative side, because that'll overtake us at times. Some of the funniest things I've heard was, now I did go to a culinary school, and I went through the American Culinary Federation to get all my degrees and all my everything. So I'm papered. I am papered. I'm a pedigreed. My brother went through this same time. He chose the celebrity path. I chose more of the path that allows me to have all these certificates. I'm a bit of a glory hound when it comes to that. I'm like, I need my papers to show that I do. And it's almost hilarious the amount of people that I hear, well, I'm a chef too. I worked at a kitchen in the back of the night. There's differentiations. I'm very proud of my education. I'm very proud that I worked under 2 certified master chefs through ACF. We're not talking a celebrity. My brother chose that path because that's something that he likes, and that's cool. That's fine. Great for him. Everybody has to find their own way. I was told that I am a woman. I'm a mom. Of course I cook. I've been told to get in the kitchen multiple times because go make me a sandwich. I'm like, okay, well, I'm a chef. Like, what kind of sandwich do you want? Yeah, I hand make some croissants for you. What are we doing? A lot of the people, they'll look at me and they're like, you're not a chef. Only men are chefs. I'm like, okay. But dealing with that, and then a lot of people think I'm more of a hard ass. And they think that I'm one of those people like Chef Julian Slowik from the movie where they clap their hands. and they bark an order. Yeah, I've worked in kitchens like that, and I've had to do that at points in time, but why? Well, don't you want a really awesome house where you want to go to work? I've worked in high-end dining places, and a lot of it's family-oriented. That's the way you're going to really achieve a family atmosphere. I've also seen kitchens where it's a silent kitchen. You don't talk. You just move around each other, and that's wonderful, but good Lord, it's terrifying, because you're like, if I drop something, it's like rattling around some papers when you're in church and it's quiet time and everybody's, you just want that peppermint, and you just rattle, 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 rattle. That's kind of the way those kitchens feel. What I am is I am an artist, and I make edible art. And so when people are like, well, you're a hard ass, I'm like, well, you wouldn't say that to somebody who paints pictures. You wouldn't say that to somebody who knits. You wouldn't say that to a stage performer but we've had such an ideal about us. Gordon Ramsay, and then Guy Fieri. It's like, really? Really? That's not me. So I think that misperception with the celebrity and with movies, I think they apply it to us. And when they get into a kitchen, they just immediately panic. I'm like, well, I want to bring out the inner, I want to help you give birth to your creative side. That's not going to happen when I'm screaming at you. That's not going to happen when I'm mad at you. And I'm a female, yes, absolutely. But guess what? I'm a chef too.
Yeah, that's interesting that people tend to get really fussy over their food, which is something that you need multiple times a day to survive. And when somebody like Star comes around and wants to heighten that to either a creative aspect or just get their taste buds better, and then people just turn around and kind of throw it in their face. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, it is.
Now, you had mentioned you've gotten a lot of education, a lot of classes in the culinary arts. Do you recommend that for anybody trying to get started?
So I will tell you exactly what a 30-year chef out of the United States Army, or out of the Navy, went to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. He graduated, he taught at the Le Cordon Bleu at the Orlando Culinary Academy when it was that. If you love cooking, don't go to culinary school. That will suck every bit of joy out of you. And I can see how he's right. It takes a special type of person. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I understand what he means. It takes a special type of person to have a love of something, than to go through the school, learn about it, and then still have that love. There was a Spongebob episode where Spongebob sat in art class with Squidward, and he drew this perfect circle, and Squidward was, how did you draw a perfect circle? And then he drew the face of David, the sculpture of David, and he goes, and then I erase this, and then I erase this, and there's the perfect circle. And he's like, well, that's not how you do it. So the instructor came in and was teaching him how to draw a circle, and basically when he was done with it, he couldn't draw a perfect circle, and he would just jagged lines and everything. And I think school is great for people who want to learn the methodology behind creating culinary arts, how to cook something, how to season it, that sort of thing. But if you have any sort of creativeness and love, that will burn you out pretty quick. You have to toe the line every morning at 6 a.m. You have to have chef whites, and they have to stay white. You have to know how to do everything. And if the kitchen opens at 7, if you're not there at 5, you're late. Things like that. So that mentality behind there, they're just trying to make you into a high-end chef. I get that. Like, I understand that. It's kind of boot camp, right? So once you're done with boot camp, you can go off and be an officer and all these other fabulous, amazing things. But when you're there, you have to do a certain amount of things. That'll burn you out, because if you can't do those things because you're more of a creative, and you're like, well, I just want some green on the plate. They didn't ask for green on the plate. They asked for brunoise carrots on the side. You can't be creative there. You have to follow the directions to a T. You have to get all of the measurements down. You have to do all of the book work, and there's a lot of book work there. A lot of book work. A lot of sitting there measuring different things, getting your knife skills right. That takes away from wanting to plate some amazing stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's, if they want to go, if they love it, then you're not going to love it afterwards.
Gotta love, here at Pique My Interest, we dissect masterpieces like The Menu and Spongebob. For the folks who don't have an interest or the passion to go to a school or a culinary academy, do you have any advice for somebody who's just interested at flavors at home? Any certain YouTube channels or cookbooks that you could recommend for a starting cook?
I started off watching The Galloping Gourmet and Julia Childs when I was a child, myself. Watching how they just brought joy, and good Lord, I know Julia Childs was sloppy, and she had a glass of wine for the stew and a glass of wine for the chef, and then she was just a mess. But seeing her love of that, and watching that, because there's one, I guess it's a two-part answer. So one, you got to have that really love, not a desire for anything else. It has to be a pure love, not, well, I'm going to make it better than my neighbor. It's like, well, congratulations, but spite's only going to get you so far in life. You have to have a love of it. I recommend going through the old cookbooks, finding The Joy of Gastronomy, The Joy of Cooking. There's a lot of French. French is the mother of all culinary everything. It is intimidating, let me tell you. Even in going through school and picking up a lot of the stuff outside of there, it is really intimidating. But you have to have a love, first of all. Jumping into something where I just want to be a chef because I've seen such and such do it, or I failed out of every other career, this is the last one, you're not going to last in this one, and you're going to be what we in the industry call a hack. You don't want to do that. It's like copying Van Gogh's Starry Night over and over and over and trying to sell that off as your own. You're not going to do it, and everybody's going to know that you're fake. You're fake. Don't do it. So if you have this love, go forth, get those books, go and experience all the restaurants that you can. Start growing your own food and your own herbs. I highly recommend growing herbs. If you say you can't grow something, then you honestly probably shouldn't be a chef, because you need to understand the life cycle of plants and enjoy it truly. I mean, being immersed in growing a basil plant. That's what we call the slump buster. If you can't grow anything, start with a basil plant. They grow no matter what. Start with radishes. Grow that. See where that comes from. Experience the birth of a vegetable out of the ground and then putting that in a salad. It will taste better than anything else, mainly because you put your time and effort into it. So if you don't have that purity to go forth, don't do it. Then on the other side, how to educate yourself. I tend to stay away from, I'm in the industry. The last thing I want to do is go home and watch more of the industry. But I think when it comes to learning, I think everybody has their own ways to learn. I would pick up a lot of older cookbooks and start looking at them and start seeing what they did, and then pick up some newer cookbooks from like the 90s and seeing how it kind of morphed into where it's at, and then pick up cookbooks from the 2000s. There's a ton of cookbooks out there. You can find them at the thrift store, you can find them at the library, wherever. But understanding where food comes from and where it goes, you can take a bird's eye view and see where food will go next. It's pretty easy. You can actually see those curves in the road where there was the coconut craze a few years back. Yeah, that happened in the 80s. We're going to have it again. But understanding where everything's going will help you understand a lot of the flavor profiles and what's coming out, what we have more of. Right now I'm doing finishing salts, because a lot of the times I don't like having anything plain. So my finishing salts have a lot of other flavors in them. But just understanding where the ebb and flow goes, and if you can study that, then you can kind of study and see where everything else goes. And it gives you a better, broader picture of learning than it does like, well, this week, the Hollywood 48-hour diet that is based in pineapple world, you know, everything's pineapple, that's going to be right then and there. That doesn't give you enough of a backwards and a forward scope to learn about the culinary arts, because it is a big field. But understanding the ebbs and flows and where the road goes will help you get a better view of, okay, so cinnamon was really big back in the 80s. Then it was pumpkin spice, you know, a few years ago, good Lord, PSL, pumpkin spice lattes, really big. Well, now we're getting away from that and we're going into caramel. This is all part of bends in the road, but it'll help you get a broader view for a lot of people.
I love it. Yeah, the culinary arts is just such a unique art form because it combines such a visual, creative aspect as well as a science. You talk about a lot of growing and the chemical changes when you combine certain things and how that changes. It's such a unique art form. Just quickly, any funny, interesting stories or events that have happened in your field recently?
Oh my gosh, so many. So I had an administrative assistant working for me for a little bit, and I was behind on a few emails because we had taken a trip and just kind of put that on the back burner. And I remember just being sort of just fit to be tied about where I was at. I had just came from a high-end resort, and we had been fed a lot of really good food, and I'm like, okay, so I'm taking these, any place I go and anything, I'm just kind of picking and saving. And I remember talking to somebody earlier that morning about my background in high-end dining, and setting a table for, I think, 12 for some Sony executives in Florida. And I remember going out there and making the dessert for them and talking about it and being, the chef, like Chef Slowick from the menu, walking out there in my chef whites and explaining everything and like feeling like, okay, so this is where my culinary career has taken me. At the time, I think I was 5-6 years into it. So I was pretty far along to be understanding of where I was at and like upward trajectory of my career. And I remember just thinking about that. I'm like, wow, I've been up there for, I've been plating for high-end people and amazing stuff. I think it was like $350 a plate kind of thing. It was pretty pricey. And then here, it was just shocking to me, just the juxtaposition between having my administrative assistant go through some emails and seeing the brides that I had done, and this bride said that they really loved your tacos and blah blah blah, and they really did your tacos. And at that point, something in my brain snapped, and I threw one of the biggest hissy fits, and I was stomping up and down this alleyway, and I'm like, "You flipping kidding me? I went through all of my school and $90,000 in education fees and blah blah blah, and I'm known for tacos. Are you kidding me?" And my friend, without missing a beat, she goes, "Oh, here she goes again about the taco thing."
Tacos.
And it was just so funny, and it kind of, my husband was sitting right there, and he was like, "Okay, it's tacos, hon. You're all right, it's tacos." But I remember just them going, "Oh, here she goes again about the tacos." And then watching the menu, and I keep going back to that because it was so funny. He goes, "Oh, you remember Taco Tuesday, and that's what put us on the map." And it cracked me up because I'm like, yes, tacos put me on the map here, and nobody knows about my previous history of doing this fine dining and then switching over to private dining and everything. But I remember just throwing a giant hissy fit. What I didn't realize is we have cameras in here, and they caught my hissy fit. And 3-year-old Star stomping up and down, losing it over being known for tacos. Meanwhile, when I was still in culinary school, I would have given anything for anybody to know me about anything. Please just acknowledge me. But I worked so hard that I got to a point where I'm like, oh, I am known for tacos. And then I threw a fit about it. It's like the worst, and it cracks me up now. And I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that was me. That was me throwing a fit about being known for tacos. Yeah. Who would not want to be known for it's tacos? Tacos
for these
amazing.
Sexy tacos.
They're the sexy tacos, but just that, oh, here she goes again about the tacos, and it's okay, your tacos. Years ago, I would have given anything for anybody to know my name for tacos, but just putting in that work and then switching gears to no tacos, and then I'm throwing a fit about it. I'm like, oh my God, what a prima donna little attitude I had. And obviously it was just a moment in time, but that was the funniest story I had of me throwing a fit about tacos, about being known for tacos. I'm like, that's it, known for tacos. Are you kidding me? But yeah, that was kind of a juxtaposition of past versus present.
So, Miss Star Ironside, how does one get a hold of one of your tacos?
So on the night of the full moon, we go and find a black cat and we bring that black cat. So I'm totally kidding now. So you go to www.thehouseofsm.com. Just finished that website. Super proud of myself. Had no idea how to build a website. Put it together. There are 3 different ways. I put links all over the place of how to contact us, how to reserve us for a wedding, how to get in for a chef's table. Chef table is really fun. So take you and a couple of friends, bring you into my restaurant, set you up, teach you how to make a meal. You cook it yourself, and then you eat it. Really fun. I also go over some plating techniques and why we do things the way we do. So it's a very short excerpt of how to be a chef, how to cook a fun meal, how to eat it, how to have fun. I make sure you leave here with a doggy bag and a big smile on your face. My catering, I do big high-end weddings. I am booked through 2024.
Or small fun weddings.
Your wedding was amazing. It was so amazing.
Thank you.
So that's what we do. We're booked through 2024, but I do have a lot of available dates. My private dining, I do everything. My favorite is breakfast. I love breakfast.
Breakfast is the best.
Second breakfast. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
If you, and like I can do up to 40 people in my dining on the avenue here.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want. You want to do brunch, we can do a brunch. I will provide the food. I'll provide the space. There's a small venue fee. There's a fee for me to stand here and be the dog and pony show for your brunch. Come in here and enjoy the space. You don't have to be dressing nice. I prefer that you do, because when do we ever get to dress nice here in Montana?
Exactly.
If you want to wear something nice, this is indoor. I can turn the heat on. You'll be fine. Wear a slinky little dress in the middle of winter. If not, come in a onesie. I don't care. But that's how to get a hold of us and get on my schedule.
Fantastic. I can't thank you enough for joining me and piquing my interest about your tacos. And thank you to all my peekers out there. Let me know if you have any special or unique artists or art forms that you think I should explore. Remember, creativity comes from the heart. Push yourselves. Be kind to each other. I'm Scoob Decker, and thank you for helping me pique my interest.